Hello everyone, I hope you're doing well. Recently I've been thinking quite a bit about what advice I would have wanted to hear when I started journaling years ago. So I thought I'd share in today's video a couple of my thoughts and tips I have on starting a journal. As with most things, I think it really helps to begin with the basics. Starting to journal is a lot easier when you figure out exactly why it is you want to journal and also what you want to get out of it. When I was younger, as you can see by some of the journals that I've shown you, I used my journal a lot more like a diary. So I used to purely write down the things that had happened in my day or write down my feelings about things. I think it was then around 2017 when I discovered bullet journaling and art journaling, and as you can see, my journals became quite different. I started to experiment a lot more with different hand lettering and photos, and I also strayed away from the style of documenting my life in a simple written passage each day. If you ask yourself why you want to journal, it may be because you want to remember certain parts of your life or you want to organize things such as in bullet journaling, but it can also be that you simply enjoy drawing and doodling and you want somewhere to collect your art. I think that is one of the best things about keeping a journal. There really are no rules and things can change from journal to journal or even from page to page. Today I wanted to create a really simple spread, so I've taken out my watercolor paints, which I'm getting into a lot recently, and I don't really have any specific plan for today except that there is a quote that I found recently that really inspired me and I think is quite relevant to anyone who's wanting to start a journal or even start art in some way, and so I want to find a way to capture that quote on my spread today. Even though I've been journaling for some time, I still find that a blank page can be really daunting. It can be hard to come up with ideas or figure out what you want to create, even when you've been journaling for years like I have. So something that helps me when I'm feeling that way is to think about simple things that excite and inspire me. So these could be colors or pictures. Often it's words for me. I listen to a lot of music on a daily basis and I get very inspired by lyrics. So often in my journals, I find myself creating pages with lyrics that I've recently heard on them, or incorporating lyrics I really like into the spread that I'm making. In terms of what I'm using on this spread, I've kind of gathered up a couple pieces of scrap paper that I have. You may have seen these in other videos that I've made before. I have this notebook of lined paper from Muji that cost me maybe around £1, so it was fairly cheap, and I'm just using that along with some blank white paper and also just some beigey pink paper. I was inspired by the notice board that hangs above my desk, where I've just got a bunch of photos and random things pinned on. So I wanted to create that kind of layered scrapbook-like effect on the spread. You can now see that I'm adding the watercolor on top of the blank white paper. This isn't actually watercolor paper, so it didn't absorb the paint that well, but it dried okay and I like the results in the end. I did at first think that maybe I was making a bit of a mistake whilst I was doing this, but I think that is one of the important lessons when starting to journal, is that sometimes things may not seem like they're turning out okay, but you usually make do in the end with what you've created, and things usually turn out better than you might have initially thought. The quote that I'm writing here is the one I mentioned earlier, which is a quote that is particularly meaningful to me. It reads, "If you hear a voice within you say you cannot paint, then by all means paint and that voice will be silenced." It's actually a quote by Vincent van Gogh, and I think it's really important because we can often be put off by the fear that we might not create something that's perfect. But I think that the progression that you'll see from each journal that you have is actually one of the best parts of keeping one. When I look back at my old journals, I can see how far I've come and what parts of me have changed, and I think that that is often most evident in maybe the small so-called mistakes I've made. So here I'm just going in and adding a couple details in with a fine liner. So I've added some doodles of birds, or a flock of birds flying in the sky. I think that goes along with the clouds that I've painted with the watercolor paints. And I'm also going into the actual paintings that I've made and just adding some further details with the pen just to make it pop a bit more. I wanted to create this spread in particular because I wanted to emphasize that journaling doesn't need to be complicated or expensive. When I started journaling, I definitely didn't have any fancy pens or stickers or anything like that. In fact, even now I don't feel like I have a very elaborate stationery collection. I think having those things is really great for sure, but it's definitely not necessary to have them. And in fact, I think simple can often be better, especially for when you're starting out. If you're about to start a journal or have just started a journal, I really hope you have fun and enjoy the process. After all, that's what it's all about. Please give this video a like if you've enjoyed it and subscribe to see more like this. I hope you have a really good day, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.